Welcome to Beyond the Block, a Web3 focused podcast where in each episode we'll explore a topic impacting our industry. Joined by an esteemed industry colleague, we'll dive deep into how it's driving our businesses. This is, of course, all powered by Kadena, the only truly scalable Layer 1 proof-of-work blockchain. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Block. I am Ryan. I am the head of partnerships here at Kadena, and joining me today is Dion Cornett, CEO of Tatum. Welcome to the show, Dion.
Hey, Ryan. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, great to see you. It's been a while. I know we saw each other a few weeks back at Consensus, which, as you know, all these IRL events are wild and wonderful, and you get to meet some incredible people. You get to hear some interesting stories about the tech and the industry and whatnot, and you and I were fortunate enough to actually meet face to face, which was, if I'm not mistaken, only a few weeks in for you into the gig.
Yeah, and for people that haven't spent that time with Ryan, I can say he's working at smart guy at a great company, but he's also a very fun person to hang out with, and that's one of the cool things about this industry.
Thank you.
Regardless if you're doing work or not.
Oh, appreciate that. Awesome. Well, I know you and I have spoken a bunch. I'm super excited by what we are building together in our partnership. I have known the Tatum team for probably 2 going on 3 years now, have nothing but wonderful things to say about everyone and anyone that I've engaged with. More importantly today, though, we want to get to know Dion. We want to hear a bunch about your story, your background. I know you've shared a lot with me, and we actually have some similar and different paths and backgrounds and whatnot. So why don't you kick off telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, Ryan, hey, thank you. So I have to admit, I'm very new to this space. So I'm less than 2 months in, having assumed this role on May 1st. And it's been it's a whole new world for me. I come from sort of a long-term open source guy selling developers database related stuff. I was 9 years at Red Hat in various executive roles, ran sales for MariaDB, led a DevOps database company, Liquibase, and most recently president of dbeaver. And so admittedly, I came to the blockchain space with a database perspective. It's another family database with this really cool quality called immutability. And I've quickly learned it's so much more than that. And so it hasn't been disappointed at all being here these couple of months. Tons to learn, and there's so much potential of this product beyond just sort of being a data product. Really happy to have made the leap.
Yeah, and welcome to this crazy world. The jump from Web 2 to Web 3 it's more than a jump. It's more like a leap and a rocket ship and whatever else to get across that chasm. But it is an exciting time in the industry as a whole. And your background actually relates really well to, I guess, the focus of what Tatum's doing, how it translates into the world of blockchain, of Web3, which at the end of the day is a lot about transactions, data types, data sets, etc. I guess for yourself, like, what are you really excited about right now?
Well, so most people know blockchain, and it's no secret, is a store of value, right? All the stories about crypto and currency. When I tell people I'm going to a blockchain company, they're like, "Oh, you're going to the Bitcoin world," and they all these preconceived notions about that, and I must be dealing with drug dealers and money launderers and this sort of thing. But what gets me excited is blockchain as a technology. And again, as I sort of ran through the background, there was a consistent data theme in all those companies I've worked with. And it's been interesting for me. I started out in the open source world when there were really 4 databases that sort of ruled the world, and was part of that early wave of open source databases that opened that up. And so we've gone from sort of Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, and Sybase to literally 200 databases you might see consumed in enterprise, all with sort of niche use cases and big families of them, right? So we started out with SQL, and we got to NoSQL and NewSQL and graph databases and time series databases. There's all kinds of purpose-built databases for a world of microservices. And blockchain has candidly been left out of that market till now as a technology. And I think for good reasons, right? Databases are very good. And blockchain, until pretty recently, has been sort of expensive and slow by contrast. And so the exciting part for me is we're working with companies like Kadena who's changing that whole dynamic around performance and what it costs to do transactions in blockchain. And so I think when is sort of that curve, we come down that curve of sort of cost performance, and it's going to open up a whole new world of applications where databases have long desired to be, and that is knowing that you can have trust in that data. And so if you think about how it works today, you have this database, which by its very nature can change state, and you build all these walls and layers around it, SSO and OAuth and SAML, and the list goes on to guarantee sort of what's in that database. Whereas the elegant way to do this is with blockchain. And I think we're on the cusp of that breaking open in a big way.
Yeah, and interesting you say it like that, which is firstly, great background. I love the open source, the database background. I mean, you even watch the transition from traditional structured databases all the way through unstructured databases and types as such. And as you said, 150, 200 plus database companies and organizations and whatever else out there. And then we talk about blockchain, which for majority of people is just a black box. It's what's actually under that hood. How do we read that data? What data is being collected? What can we do with the data? Those in the field and those with the expertise know exactly what we can do with the data, at least today, and we'll be able to do so much more beyond that. But what I love about where you sit and where Tatum sits and whatever else is the fact that we're uncovering and opening up the doors to the insights of that data. And it's through all these different connections that we work with you guys. I mean, we're now hosting an indexer service with you to make it a lot simpler to be able to read the data. We've enabled APIs and other ways for our developers to actually access that data. I guess by way of question, or I guess trying to get a little bit more info or whatever else, where do you see us going from here? We've come from a data perspective, that is, come from a structured to unstructured to this blockchain world. Like what's going on in the blockchain world? Where do you see us going? Like where do you see the evolution of data?
I think it's as we continue to sort of be competitive in a cost and performance and latency standpoint, that's going to open up a world of new applications. And look, some of the companies I've sold to, large U.S. financial institutions, even prior to taking this job, sort of polling them, hey, what are you doing with blockchain? What's going on? They are looking at it seriously from those aspects. And I'll give you one use case in terms of something like auditability. And so if I'm a large U.S. bank and I've got this whole world of software that I've got to maintain to provide my services, be able to prove to regulators that, hey, yeah, we patched this piece of software at this point in time that we were supposed to have patched it to stay in compliance. That's a problem that takes a lot of effort today. And, and even to the extent that ends up in a database, you still have to prove it. And there's, you're doing reversible hashes and all kinds of ways to sort of validate that, where again, the elegant solution is blockchain. And I think people appreciate that. And so there is a lot of work being done in sort of these transactional states need to maintain a database. And sort of the cool part about this is it's actually being helped by what's happening on the currency side, right? So when I talk about blockchain being more than just a database, that it has this economic system to it, that economic system in some ways can help fuel that innovation. And so, with the approval of the Ethereum ETFs, you have to think about there's now thousands of brokers out there pushing this as, hey, you should have this as part of your portfolio. It's just common sense. And the expertise, the teams developing and providing those ETFs is the same expertise they will use for using blockchain as a technology in all these places where it makes sense as a database.
Yeah, I think that's actually really well put. And it was one of the topics I did want to dive into with you, because we're now finally seeing institutional finance not just dabble in the likes of blockchain, but actually start to look to move services or provide services that they couldn't otherwise provide, or that they could provide, but in a very complex manner. Right. They can now do that on the blockchain, right? Which makes it a lot easier, as you said, verifiability. I guess you could use the term immutable records or immutability, where you can actually prove what's on chain and simply, it's not just some person with a spreadsheet or a note keeping track of what's going on. It's verifiable data. Here's the actual timestamp of when that data took place. It's a immutable ledger as such. Interesting times that we're certainly.
So for us, look, and I want to talk about the company. I think is sort of cool riffing on the industry
Yeah.
here, but it's about how, as industry participants, how do we make this easy, right? I mean, if you're a developer, the jump from Web 2 to Web 3 can feel sort of daunting. I mean, some things are counterintuitive, learning how to do that. And so how do we focus on a set of tools, capabilities, APIs that, a smart developer can come up to speed very quickly? I mean, the reality is, I think the big limitation on, again, some of the people I talked to even prior to coming in this role is, it's just, do I have the technical skills in house to use this technology in a scale that's going to make a difference in my massive IT operations? And so, in a world where, and I saw some report the other day that there might only be in the US, I don't want to exaggerate these numbers here, but 8,000, sort of Web3 developers skilled on the front end kind of stuff. I mean, and I think the global number was 30 or 50K, something like that. These are paltry numbers compared to the pool of developers that they have for building other aspects of their back end. And so, how do we give people comfort that this isn't a risky thing? We've got the skill sets here. It's not just going to be one person or organization that might get sick or take another job, but there's going to be a breadth of people that understand this technology and help you build and maintain it. And I think that's an important thing for us all to do, different aspects of the industry.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, and I think I shared this with you last week when we caught up. But I liken our stage right now on blockchain adoption to what we went through with cloud computing, where we had this birth of the cloud, and people were like, "Well, that's a black box in the air. How do I touch that? How do I see what's going on? I don't trust this. There's no ways I'm going to move any of my workloads there." And so everybody just kept their apps and data on premise. And then slowly they would dabble and they would say, okay, what don't I care about losing? Or what kind of, testnet kind of or sandbox apps can I move to the cloud? And they would test moving those to the cloud. And then they would prove, well, hold on a sec, actually, the cloud provides this resilience and this ability to expand resources and provide functionality that I can't do on-prem. Let me move more and more workloads. And so they created this hybrid model before like basically in no time, you see businesses and companies and enterprise organizations move entire workloads. It's not a what if cloud, it's a cloud first decision. And then only if it really, really, really has to live on-prem for some kind of security constraints or whatever else, then it does. And it feels like we're doing similar with the blockchain. It's, okay, we're going to dabble in the blockchain. People are going to move certain kinds of workloads. We're now suddenly seeing institutional financial organizations move workloads or at least test out the blockchain. And hopefully we're on that same trajectory path where we'll see more and more come to the blockchain. There'll be certain workloads that just don't belong on the blockchain, and something in between. Like, is that something you're seeing as well? Is that how you would feel?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great analogy. This is exactly what's happening. First it's, we're not going to touch it, to we're going all in on it, right? Seeing that path. And I think open source also has sort of a similar path like that, right? And there's a lot of parallels for me coming from the open source world into blockchain. I mean,
Yeah.
they're both about transparency, freedom. There's sort of elements of trust.
Absolutely.
They're permissionless systems, right? I mean, in open source, I don't need some architect's permissions to go work on a piece of code. I can contribute, these community aspects. And so there's a lot of commonality there. And if you think about where open source has really made a difference in parts of the world, it's in emerging economies in Asia and Latin America, where it's actually a much bigger percentage of consumption than it is in the world as a whole. And I think it will be the same thing with blockchain, right? We've got trust institutions. Ultimately, we can sort of trust that, hey, if we pay money for a title, we'll get that title. That may not be the case in a place like India. And so I think, there will be a lot of parallels between cloud and open source about how adoption happens, but there will be big segments of the world where it's blockchain is the only way to get things done.
Yeah.
And in some ways that will lead in sort of the more developed where, yeah, you have trusted institutions, but this is still a better technology for this problem.
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, it certainly is highly viable in certain regions of the world where there is so much control by the government. It is actually what do you call it? It's overbearing to the point that people can't even act or transact or even have any trust in either their funds, if we're talking about financial institutions or whatever else. But the only way that they'll be able to survive and transact and interact with the rest of the world is actually via the blockchain itself.
Yeah. So again, to your point, we're seeing sort of the early stages of adoption in the major financial institutions that will snowball. And then like basically any other technology, financial services tend to lead the way because it provides such competitive advantage. And then you'll see a host, healthcare will fall in line, general manufacturing. I mean, it's in some ways COVID has caused laggard industries like retail and groceries to be more adept at technology. So you might even see sort of a tighter compression of adoption of these technologies compared to what we may have seen in the past.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I was actually going to ask you some of that. So somebody that's just stepping into this world, what kind of ideas or use cases or I guess viable blockchain technology and platform and integrations are you starting to think about that are going to make a difference? Some will be low-hanging fruit, some are going to be way longer tail kind of deployments and interactions. What are you starting to think about?
Yeah, this has been well discussed, right? I mean, people talk about these things from government records to supply chain, financial transactions. I think these are all cases. I mean, we're going to be agnostic. We're going to sort of be tools providers to everyone that wants to get going here.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, the song, "You can't be with one you love the one you're with." So the people that sort of figure this out may not be all from financial institutions, and so we're going to jump on and help them sort of solve problems.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, Tatum's very well positioned in many aspects for this. You are, or at least from my angle, heavily developer focused, but also enterprise and app focused. You're essentially building out this toolkit of ways for developers to be successful, ways for blockchains to integrate and interact and be successful, ways to partner, ways to build the ecosystem, and whatever else. So from an infrastructure standpoint or from a value perspective, you guys are right in the thick of it.
Look, I think there's a lot of understanding within the company that regardless of how cool a technology is, there's a lot that goes around that technology to be consumable, right? So what is the ecosystem? We're sort of this abstraction layer. What's the sort of host of chains below us that people want to use to solve problems? What's the ecosystem above and around us that fill in gaps that we don't have within our own product set, right? How do we partner and complement that? I think there's an understanding for any technology going into an enterprise. It's not just about the technology of the problem, but what's sort of the security stance of that? How's it fit into the existing protocols? What's consumed, how do you support that from an SLA perspective, both in terms of availability and in terms of response when there are issues? And so I think there's a lot of expertise within the company in selling technical solutions to enterprises. And I think everyone appreciates it's more than just the tech itself. There's a whole gamut of capabilities you have to provide to make it consumable.
Yeah, and that's fantastic because you guys are more than just plumbing or integral components, being the infrastructure layer, but as well as the tool layer. You're both blockchain agnostic, you're environment agnostic, you're developer type agnostic, which actually gives the play for any kind of infrastructure provider of this case endless opportunity. It doesn't matter if somebody's building DeFi or gaming, institutional finance products, developing a wallet, whatever it is, there are tools and code snippets and access that they can leverage that really makes their life a lot easier. And it's not too dissimilar I keep thinking about this, and I was thinking about it when you and I were talking last week. It's not too dissimilar to actually a Web 2 world. It's a bucket of tools. It's enabling developers. It's enabling the ability to build the workloads or the data sets or the data types or the apps or whatever else. Doesn't matter. It's just at some point, it's no longer going to be Web 2 and Web 3, I guess. We're just going to call it the web. Like we're building on some kind of internet infrastructure, right?
Yeah, it's again, I think that the parallels back to open source. No, today, 95% of the software that's enabling us to have this conversation over public internet is open source code. People don't care at this point, right? It's good quality, elegant software that delivers this, and it will be the same with Web 2 versus Web 3. People will understand that this is a tool, and maybe this is a point we should elaborate on.
Yeah.
Let's not be religious about it, right? Not everything is going to need to be on chain. Right, it's gonna. We'll end up in a hybrid world where those things that really benefit from that immutability, the distributed nature, some of the trust models in blockchain will be on chain, and there's lots of other stuff that doesn't make sense to put on chain, and so yeah. Again, early days of open source, there was a lot of religious sentiment. You can't charge for software. Open source has to be pure. All these kind of things, and we'll end up in a more practical world where, again, Web 2 and Web 3 will be blended, and microservices will call on both.
Absolutely, that makes me smile because it's actually one of the terms that I use quite often, which is, or the sayings, which is, not everything belongs on the blockchain. It was the same as the cloud. Not everything belongs in the cloud. You just can't move certain workloads, and there's reasoning behind that, whether it's security, whether it's cost, whether it's resource constraints, whatever it may be. There's just some stuff that won't belong on the blockchain. There's some stuff that will. It's part of why we're even seeing this whole modularity concept in this blockchain world, where you're basically segregating out the different layers. You've got the consensus layer, you've got the execution layer, you've got the data layer or the data availability layer, and whatever else. And the reason is it makes sense to split those kind of workloads out and treat them slightly differently. Not everything needs to be in a private, secure, 100% decentralized manner. Although we'd like to move as much as we can, not everything is going to actually live like that. At least I don't see it that way.
Yeah, and I'd say I'd give a shout out to the people driving those innovations.
Yeah.
I've alluded a couple times to blockchain historically being costly and slow. And these type of innovations just make that problem go away. I mean, what you guys are doing at Kadena in terms of performance and sort of crunching down gas fees to be negligible.
Yeah.
I mean, the more innovation like this, the more it becomes obvious that this is the sort of the data technology that can be used.
It does. I agree and appreciate that. The more services we can find that make that world and life easier for these developers to onboard, for these developers to actually build these workloads, to be creative, to be innovative, to take these ideas of data availability or blockchain modularity and actually bring it to real life. It's not a click of the finger or a flick of a switch. It takes months and hours and even years to actually bring this to fruition. And thankfully, we're actually starting to see a lot of that come to life. So you're spot on. There are some really, really hyper smart people out there that are coming out with ideas of how we can do things, how we literally take a box of devices and we split them all out because it makes more sense. And then we bring some back in, and then we have this, I guess we'll have this again, another hybrid world of how this data all coexists. Let me ask you this. You've come from an open source database background. Data is arguably the most valuable asset that we ever create, both in our real lives and online. What are you thinking? Like, what is the vision if you had to look forward 18 months, 3 years, 5 years? What are you thinking? Where are you seeing the world of data go? Whether it's directly Web3 related, I don't mind if we even talk about Web2 world or whatever else, but where do you see this all going?
One of the really fun things I like about being in this space is it's not just the technology. Look, I've been in some spaces where there's a lot of enthusiasm for what it does. Like it, so Liquibase was a CI/CD platform, right? And when people move from waterfall into sort of agile design, they get really jazzed about it and they see a lot of potential. Blockchain is like CI/CD on steroids. I mean, people are really jazzed and excited about where this technology can go. And so, a year and a half, 3 years, 5 years, I don't know what the exact time frame is, but I think, just as we went through this phase where this is a dubious technology, this is a cool technology. I just think being part of the industry when it becomes, all right, this is a cool technology. I mean, who doesn't do CI/CD today? It's going to be the same way 3 years out. Who doesn't have blockchain apps as part of their infrastructure today? Just being part of a group that helps make that happen is job satisfaction.
Yeah, it'll just be really seen as a tech stack as opposed to what most people outside of the industry just look at this as, well, okay, so it's cryptocurrency. What is it? I can't touch it. I can't feel it. I don't know what it is. It's hidden. It's you start off describing that. It's used for nefarious behavior or hiding or whatever else. Whereas this is actually an enablement layer. It's a tech stack that enables actual openness, transparency, breaks down all the borders, allows you to share quite easily, transact really fast, but also provide data that's verifiable in a real fast manner, which is not so easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, we're both smiling because we know we're going to help change the world a little bit.
Yeah,
right. And that's the best we can hope for our professional lives. And I'll maybe make one. There's only two things I can really clearly state will change the world a bit today. It's AI and blockchain. And I'd say even the AI guys need us. We talk about sort of the range of applications we're working with. One of the companies that is a customer of ours, they're doing, I don't want to be too specific, but they're creating content, it's music content and art content and stuff like that with AI. And where blockchain can help is, hey, how do I prove that this is legitimately created content and not ripped off someone's copyright, or what's sort of the provenance of the data that was used to train my model. And then once it's created, how do I ensure that this is actually what I created and it hasn't been altered with AI? And so I think these two go hand in hand in helping change the world, and we'll probably be part of both of them, even if right now the focus is blockchain.
I agree. You've just absolutely opened the Pandora's box on one of my favorite conversations to have or to dive deep into, which is the AI meets blockchain. So the intersection between AI and blockchain. I love talking to the smart folk out there that really understand why it makes sense for blockchain and AI to coexist, where the value is, where everything from verifiability to data layers to the modeling to LLMs and whatever else that, I mean, if you really look back at where we're talking about modularity, there's no ways that you want to be running all these number crunching and AI analytics and machine learning and whatever other algorithms directly on the blockchain. That's going to be, which is your either your L1 finality layer or whatever else, because it's just going to really destroy the resources. But you can offload some of those resources, do your modeling, and then verify and bring the data back to where it belongs. This world of AI absolutely fascinates me. I think we're seeing more and more AI projects actually come to life, and we're seeing the likes of the real use of blockchain and AI, as you said, verifiability of the actual content, verifiability of the source, of the creator, and then, I mean, you can even get into, depending on what's being created, royalties that flow with it, and et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as the stakes step up in AI, then the requirements for sort of the verifiability of the data will just increase.
They do. And then I guess where it becomes quite interesting, and I'm not going to make an assumption, but where it becomes quite interesting for the infrastructure providers is what I'm starting to see is the same. Like if we look at, I mean, we're proof of work network. We have miners that run this very high end complex equipment to actually mine blocks on the blockchain. What we're seeing with a number of providers that actually provide the infrastructure stack is that some of them are looking at, well, I can carve off some of my resources to actually do blockchain validation or mining or whatever else. And then on the other side, I can actually use my resources for AI, for rendering, or for compute or whatever else. Is that something you've actually started to see?
I haven't yet, but it makes perfect sense, right? Because you get these sort of spiky workloads on both sides. I mean, it's no different than Amazon opening up its infrastructure to third parties, 15 years ago, whatever it was. So no, it makes absolute sense, right? You've got compute. You want to keep that compute as low as you can all the time. The transactions can be spiky. In between those spiky transactions, let's solve some problems.
And people, I guess, can either earn or provide resources during idle times. I've actually seen a couple of interesting projects recently where you can use handheld devices, so mobile phones, tablets, whatever it is. I mean, I'm sure many of us have old phones or whatever else just sitting in the drawer. They're doing nothing. You can power them on, but you're not going to use it because it's not cool anymore, or it's not powerful enough for some of the iOS or Android apps or whatever else. But it still has memory in there. It has storage in there. It has compute in there. You can actually serve up that data, those resources, should I say, to actually be used and pulled for either some kind of, maybe not AI, because that may be a little bit harsh, but maybe you could serve up some storage or some compute network platform or whatever else. Talk to me, if you can, about, if you're allowed to share, anything that you're excited for on the roadmap for Tatum.
So again, I sort of went back. Our raison d'etre, reason for being here is, how do we make Web3 easy? And I think increasingly people are asking for that easiness to translate between chains. A lot of interchange going on, and so I think that the sort of this next wave of ecosystem build out for us will ensure that we provide some levels of portability and solutions that people have made built, and this can be from our customers demand it. Customers say, hey, you're here, I want to be able to be here, and we will make it easy for our customers to serve their end users, and when that's required.
I love that. And is there anything that you're seeing? I mean, I think you guys work with 40 plus blockchains today, roughly, give or take. Any
more,
kind of trend? What? How many?
A few more, but yeah.
A few more. Okay. Well, we'll share the exact numbers afterwards. I always know that it's safe to say 40 plus. Some don't even do it anywhere close to that. Are you seeing any trends, like emerging trends outside of what we may have already discussed, that are really driving developer uptake of either your nodes or the services? Like you guys offer some incredible APIs and endpoints or whatever else. Is there any particular industry trends that you feel are driving that right now?
There's so again, less than a couple of months on board here. I have managed to talk to a couple dozen of our customers, and I'd say one of the consistent themes I hear is insights into what's happening on the show. Not just the data, but how do I actually get actionable information from the data? And so a lot of investment going around about how we're able to provide snapshots and flat files and sort of aspects of what's happening on chain that can serve someone's business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love hearing that, because firstly, that'll translate very well back to your data space and the database world and whatever else. I mean, data insights are highly valuable, highly sought after. I said it right in the beginning, blockchain is seen as a black box. How do we actually see what's under the hood? There's incredible data being created, but it is slightly complex. You need some kind of data ingestion. You need some kind of data export tools. There's some kind of normalization in the middle, and it's all, that's why I say it's just going to be the web. It's all Web 2 kind of conversions. It still feels like these ETL or even ELT type transformations of data and then an output. And so if you're talking now about seeing the request for insights, or easy access to insights, and then insights that you can then action on top of, I think what we'll start seeing, if I had to take a punt, we'll probably start seeing the emergence of a lot more of visualization platforms, well beyond what we see today. But more importantly, it's not just visualization, it's then, okay, if this happens, then do that. So which will help with support desks, or you mentioned SLAs, so uptime, customer success, and you see a node go down or some kind of app go down or whatever else, you can instantaneously or at least automatically trigger some kind of action or insight or whatever else. Anything else you would love to share with us? I know, again, firstly, always a pleasure chatting with you, always a pleasure spending time with you, and welcome to our crazy world of Web3.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I would love to get a little bit more of a take before we wrap up. Like, you're approximately 2 months, less than 2 months in.
Yeah, not even 2 months in.
Less than 2 months in. I mean, it is fire hose time. I know exactly what those first 3, 4, 5, even 6 months are like. Doesn't have to be Tatum related, doesn't have to be anything related. Would love to share your take on our world.
I can't say enough. Sort of the familiar. So I got involved in open source early. I've been working, following the space for more than 20 years, and open source was pretty crazy world at that time too, right? Like you go to these trade shows and there's people dressed as Shaolin monks or funny characters, and I have to say the space just feels very comfortable. I really enjoyed open source, maybe a bit more so before it became so corporate, and and so this feels like just rolling back the clock into this non-corporate world of innovation and ideation, and people really enthusiastic about what they're doing. The level of passion in this is something that you're hard pressed to find in any other segment of IT, maybe any other segment of any other industry. And so sort of this passion and innovation here has made this just a great. I can't say how happy I am to have made this jump and be part of this segment right now.
No, I love that. You said it in the very beginning. We get a chance to shape and change the world, and we don't get a lot of those opportunities.
No.
Some people got to do this during the original .com boom. Some people probably did it even prior to that. But if you look at this opportunity, which they dubbed for quite some time, the Internet 2.0, or what we now call, I guess, Web 2 and now Web 3 world, we have the opportunity to actually shape the future, build something that is truly open, that has no borders, that has the ability to maintain transparency, that has the ability to put the power back into the hands of the people. So it is an exciting time. It is an exciting industry. I do think we are starting to see a lot more corporate come into Web3, which we didn't have for a very long time. But rightly so, we're seeing that. I mean, we're seeing the institutional investors, we're seeing the big banks, we've seen BlackRock has entered the building, right? Yeah. So
no, but so look, that corporate look, ultimately we need to bring in mainstream dollars, right?
Yeah.
People that are spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on IT as is, and they're entering the world. But at the same time, this industry attracts people who there's a creative side to them, right? It seems like every other person I meet in this industry plays a musical instrument, right? There's an artistry to being in this space and that passion, and these things are decidedly non-corporate. And I think they will be the fuel that pushes this into the mainstream over the next 3-5 years.
Oh, wow. No, I love that. I guess I need to pick up an instrument. Apparently,
yeah, me too.
I'm the other half of that dime. I'm the 50% that doesn't play an instrument, at least not yet. Well, Dion, always a pleasure. Love spending time. Love hearing the story. I cannot wait to resync. Firstly, in the next event, IRL, but just as importantly, I think we should get some time. Let's call it maybe 6 months from now or whatever it is, where we can go, okay, first 6 months in this industry, how do you now feel? And then let's do the 1 year, how do you feel? And let's see how much has changed. It's a completely evolving and innovating industry. And I shared before, you're probably feeling that you're drinking from the fire hose, which is rightly so, because this industry changes overnight. But I am Really excited to have spent the time with you. I am excited for our partnership. I'm excited to expand this friendship, and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thank you again for having me on. And I look forward to seeing you in person sometime here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you,
All right.
Dion.